Welcome to the Manders Mindset Podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Manders Mindset. As always, I'm your host, Amanda Russo, aka the Breathing Goddess. And today I'm here to talk to y'all a little bit about my 2023. So I figured I would share some of my highlights and my lowlights. I've seen a lot of year-end reviews, and honestly, I didn't want to sit here and talk to y'all for an hour about my whole year of 2023. But I figured I would share some of my main highlights, some of my lowlights, and also help y'all realize how your highlights and your lowlights can often be intertwined. Something that was a highlight for you could also be looked at as a low light, depending on your perspective and your mindset. So, as y'all know, I'm big on shifting your mindset and shifting your perspective. By doing so, will change the trajectory of your whole life, honestly. And yeah, so I'm just going to get right into it with some of my highlights and my lowlights. So I will start with my highlights. As some of y'all know, a lot of them, especially if you follow me on social media. But one of my biggest highlights from this year is starting this podcast. So honestly, I just want to take a moment. If you are listening to my voice right now, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking time to listen to my podcast, because there is so much else in the world that you could be doing right now with your time. And the fact that you're choosing to listen to an episode of Manders Mindset means the world to me. It really, really does. I actually got an email from the site I submit the podcast to about the amount of downloads, how many countries it's been downloaded in, and everything like that. And y'all, Manda's Mindset has been downloaded in 7 countries. How cool is that? From Canada to the Netherlands to Sweden to India, I was blown away. You know, I first started this podcast with the intention of just being able to help anybody be able to realize how shifting their mindset can fully shift their whole life. And it has already turned into so much more. So thank you. Whether this is the first episode you're listening to, you've listened to all of them, or you've listened to a handful, thank you so much. I would also really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating or a review if you think I've earned one. A couple other highlights from the year. I tried Breathwork Detox for the first time in January. And y'all, I fell in love because it helped me release anger and resentment and grief in one session that I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. I felt so much lighter and more calm and just a different sense of ease than I've ever felt in my whole life. And it was so wild to me because, as most of y'all know, I've done a lot of healing modalities, from the plant medicines to Reiki to cacao, you name it. I've done it. But the experience I had from Breathwork Detox was mind-blowing, y'all. So that was a highlight that I experienced in January. A couple other highlights that I experienced. I went to Utah for teacher training for breathwork. And if you follow me on social media, you will have seen this. But I also went up Tocqueville Falls in Utah. Beautiful, beautiful waterfall. And I loved it. I took this rental SUV, and it was a wild experience. Looking back on 2023, this is one of my top highlights. But in the moment, it was a low light. I was I was genuinely so afraid, guys. I have never felt the feeling of my life on the line other than this moment. And there was even a moment where I didn't know if I was going to make it home alive. I even at one point I wanted to go back down and not continue all the way up. And the lady I was with, Trisha, mentioned, I don't know if we'll make it down while you attempt to do 100-point tone. We might go off the cliff. And I was like, oh, fuck. So I had to make a decision. Do we go up or do we attempt to go back down? And ultimately, I said to myself, if I can at least make it to the top and say I made it to the top, okay. Okay. So, but now looking back, it's one of my biggest highlights. Couple other highlights, and it's all depending on your perspective, guys. I started off the year, I was working as a paralegal at a law office that I had already given notice at. So I knew, even at the start of 2023, even though it's a new year, a new month, February, I was leaving. I gave a long notice thinking it would help, it would make things better. And that was a very hard thing I dealt with because a lot of unknown, a lot of uncertainty, finances were a struggle. In the mix, it was definitely a low light of my 2023. But again, that perspective shift. Now at the end of 2023, it is a highlight that I left that job. And I am grateful and glad and happy. And I have all positive feelings associated with the fact that I'm not there anymore. But in the midst of it, it was also a hardship I was facing. So that's just those two perfect examples. Your hardships, your highlights, excuse me, your highlights versus your lowlights, it all comes down to your perspective onto how you look at it. And that's with everything, guys. That's with everything. A couple other highlights for me. I made some of the most amazing friends this year. I got connected with my star family, my breathwork family, and I could not imagine my life without some of them. Shannon, Trisha, Liz, Meg, both Megs.
Brett and Becca and so many others.
List goes on. And I met Curtis Lee Thomas, the man from the stars himself, founder of Breathwork Detox. I'm a huge fan. I truly admire that man so much. And I just made such strong connections. I met my friend Jenny, who is a super close friend of mine. It's been a really amazing year. I started teaching breathwork, which is wild to think about because prior to January of 2023, I had done breathwork, but breathwork detox, I had never done, never heard of, nothing. So it just goes to show you yet again, so much can happen in a year. Another highlight I experienced was I actually placed third in an online fitness challenge from ETK Fit on Instagram. She hosted this 2-month long challenge and I got third place. And there was over 600 people in the challenge, which is so mind-blowing to me that I placed third. You know, I will also say some of your highlights might come at the other side or the other end of a low light. I'll give you an example. I won third place in that fitness challenge, but what made me decide to do the first fitness challenge with ETK Fit was I was working one-on-one with fitness coach online, and we stopped working together December 31st, 2022. It just wasn't going great. We weren't that great of a click, and I was very disappointed. I felt some sense of inadequacy, some sense of lost, confusion, a lot of disappointment, a lot of disappointment. And Erin was starting a challenge, Be Legendary 2023, that January. And I did it. And I lost some weight, built some more muscle, got my form down better on certain things. Then I did another one of her challenges, and the second time around, I placed third. And it really helped me nail down form and techniques and just some of the basics. It also even helped me build up my self-esteem, because after the way my one-on-one coaching relationship ended, I definitely felt disappointment, just again, some inadequacy. So being able to do two-month challenges with over 600 other people and have so much positive encouragement, so many people cheering me on, and such great feedback, and then placing third, huge ego boost for me. But again, this highlight came on the other side of a low light. Had my one-on-one coaching relationship not ended the way it did, maybe I would have never done one of Erin's challenges. So it's just all in a matter of that perspective. I stepped out of my comfort zone a lot this year, guys. I flew on a plane by myself for the first time in my life when I went to Utah. Then I flew on a plane again by myself when I went to Florida. That time I even left my car at the parking lot at the airport. First time doing that. Rented my own rental car by myself. First time in Utah. A lot of firsts. I've stepped out of my comfort zone so much. And I recommend it so much, guys, because it's the only way to grow. And we don't want to stand still or stay where we are. It's all about improving and bettering ourselves, you know? Another big highlight for me was starting this podcast. And if anyone would have told me at the start of January 2023 that by the end of the year I would have a podcast, I would not have believed them at all for a few reasons. Because growing up, absolutely hated the sound of my voice. Went to speech therapy for years. So if you would have told me I'd be speaking on my own podcast, never would have believed that. But here we are. And again, that goes to show y'all, you can do anything, absolutely anything you set your mind to. I strongly believe that. A couple of my lowlights of the year was being out of work, even though I knew that job wasn't for me. That was a little bit of a low light during the experience because it brought on more stress, more hardship, more uncertainty within my life. I ended up taking a different job a month and a half, 2 months after that, after I left the old law office for a different paralegal job. And I enjoyed it. I really did. But there was a part of me that just knew that wasn't what or where I was meant to be long term. There was just that feeling of, I like this, but I don't love this. And even finding myself saying that I don't hate my job. If people would ask, "Oh, how do you like the new job?" I don't hate it. Well, you don't like it, you don't love it, but you don't hate it. So there were parts of this new job that were highlights, and there were parts that were also lowlight. It depended on the time. I got along pretty well with my coworkers and with the attorneys within the office, but part of me just felt as if I did not belong there for some reason or another. Um, I had my own office to start. I loved that, which was so nice. But I did find out they were relocating and I would be losing my office and transitioning to a cubicle. And I did not want to do that. I also, as I got more familiar with their practice, there were just certain things that didn't sit right with me. Not going to get into specifics, but there were just things as to how they ran the business that morally I didn't agree with. And it's ironic, I say it's ironic, but they were relocating and I was going to be giving up my office for the cubicle as of October 1st. And I told my best friend there was no way in hell over my dead body would I be moving into the cubicle. I told her this on a Wednesday. I also told my mom that same Wednesday that there was no way in hell I'd be working there at the end of the year. Well, I got laid off 2 days later. Again, another example of a highlight and a low light. It's both. It's all dependent on your perspective and on your mindset. In the midst, I thought it was the biggest low light ever. After the fact, I was thrilled that I was laid off. I was thrilled about that. That gave me the ability to. I went to Florida and had a blast. It also gave me the ability to really focus on breathwork and on the podcast, and just also focus on myself and figure out what it is Amanda wants. Where does she want to be? Where does she want to go? What does she want to do? And it's given me that ability. Some other lowlights within my 2023, I dealt with some negative interactions with an ex-boyfriend of mine a few times that eventually blew over, but it was a little rocky for a little bit. Some other lowlights were just experiences I went through due to my own lack of boundaries. What I mean by that is situations in my life that could have been avoided had I had the courage to speak out and express myself and my feelings. I have gotten a lot better with that though. So, another highlight, I am back and forth. Oh my God. Another highlight that I had from this year is I started working with a new one-on-one coach, Lexa Voxilla. I think I said that right. And she is absolutely, absolutely amazing. And I actually found her through my old one-on-one coach. So again, all comes down to perspective, guys. It all comes down to your perspective. You know, there's a good chance I may have never gotten the opportunity to work one-on-one with Lexa had I not worked with my other one-on-one coach. And that being said, that previous low light created this highlight that's now in my life. And I challenge you all to think about that. I'm sure you have all experienced many highlights from 2023 and many lowlights from 2023. But I challenge you to review and reflect on the highlights and the lowlights and see. Shift your perspective to find a type of highlight, even in your lowlights. Now, don't get me wrong, it might not be possible for every single lowlight. If you lost a parent this year, maybe you lost a child this year, you likely won't find a highlight in that lowlight. But I'm sure there are some lowlights you can also find the highlight in. Like me with my jobs. It has its lowlights, but it also has its highlight. And I challenge you to think about that. Think and reflect on both the highlights and the lowlights. Because I'm sure you experienced both just like I did. 2023 was a wild, wild year. Some of the other highlights that I experienced this year, even small things that I wanted to do and I just did. I did paddleboard yoga for the first time. I did cat yoga, which was super cute and super cool. Bunch of cats in this cat cafe. I got myself an amazing chai latte. All around amazing day. I went to a lot of different events with friends of mine within the smoking community in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, and those were a blast. I went to my first paint and puff workshop. I've been to paint and sips, but I went to my first paint and puff. Almost forgot what it was called. But I went to my first one of those this year, which was so much fun over at Island Wellness. If you haven't checked that out, I did an episode with the owner, Casey, of Island Wellness. She is such a sweetheart. I spent a lot of time in 2023 over at Island Wellness. And it's been a really great year. Overall, this was the year Amanda did things she never thought she would have done. If you would have told December 2022 me even half of what happened to December 2023 me, she wouldn't believe you at all. This was the year I stepped out of my comfort zone. This was the year I said, fuck it. I want to do that. I'm doing them. Even Tocqueville Falls, that, you guys, I was so looking forward to and excited about that. And a lot of people had concern about that, but I didn't listen to anybody. And in the midst, I was terrified. I was terrified. I'm not much of one who prays, but y'all, I was talking to my Mimi and I was like, Mimi, I love you, but I'm going to be honest, I don't want to see you yet. I was crying, had my hands on the steering wheel right before I was about to drive back up this hill as we stopped off to the side. Because, yes, I was hoping to go back down. And I had tears in my eyes. I was squeezing the steering wheel and I said, Mimi, I love you, but I don't want to see you yet. Please just let me make it to see the falls. Please. And some fucking way how we did. And yeah, I hope y'all take the time to reflect on your highlights and your lowlights and take some time to see if any of your lowlights, if there's any part of it, even if it's one part, that could be a highlight of it. Because, you know, if you change your mindset, you'll change your life. I hope you guys take some time to review and reflect your highlights and your lowlights of 2023 and take some time to compare the two. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. You got this, and I'm rooting for you. As always, guys, thanks for listening to an episode of Mander's Mindset. If you enjoyed the show, if you would leave a rating, leave a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from this episode. Until next time, thanks, guys.
Another lowlight I experienced this year, and probably the biggest lowlight of them all, was the heartbreak from my father. But it taught me that I can't expect me or myself from other people. And honestly, that's a really valuable lesson that I'm grateful to be walking away 2023 with. I also now have a relationship with my brother, which is a highlight on top of the lowlight of that as well. And it's something I'm grateful for. So, again, all about your perspective. Getting a little vulnerable on this episode. So if you're listening to this, we're getting close. Thank you for listening to my highlights and my lowlight 2023. Until next time, guys.